Quebec's highest court has sided with the Conservative government and ruled that the province has no right to retain long gun registry records. Quebec had waged the legal fight to stop the data from being destroyed, but today the Court of Appeal says the province has no control or jurisdiction over the federal records. Quebec wants to appeal the decision to the Supreme Court, but now the question is on what grounds does today's ruling effectively kill the province's chance of using the data to create their own registry? Joining me now from Edmonton, Candace Bergen, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety. Here in Ottawa, NDP Foreign Affairs critic Paul Dewar, and on the line from Calgary, Liberal Public Safety critic Francis Scarpaleggia. All right, let me start with you, Candace Bergen. Does this ruling fundamentally do away with Quebec's plan to hold on to their gun registry data?
Well, we're obviously very pleased with the ruling. It reinforces what we believe in and what the promise that we made to all Canadians, and including Quebec long gun owners, and that would be not only get rid of the long gun registry, but destroy all of the data. As far as what Quebec is going to do moving forward, if they want to create their own registry, they are obviously within their jurisdiction to do that. But we maintain that the data needs to be destroyed. It should be destroyed for all Canadian long gun owners who are licensed gun owners, and that includes those who are in Quebec.
I'll tell you, the Chief Justice was unequivocal, and if you read judgments, they're very rarely as strongly worded as this one. Let me just read a bit of it. It says, quote, Quebec has no property right in the data in the Canadian Firearms Registry. The data does not belong to Quebec. The provinces have no control over it. From the moment the data is entered into the registry to the moment of its destruction, the registrar of the firearms, a federal public servant, has the sole responsibility. The Parliament of Canada can certainly decide to stop compiling and preserving that information. Nicole Duval-Hessler of the Quebec Court of Appeal. Paul Dewar, basically, that's as unequivocal as it gets. What's your view?
Well, the ruling is pretty straightforward, Evan, absolutely, and I'm glad you put that to Canadians to see, because it was so clear about jurisdiction and who's responsible for what. That said, we said at the beginning of this is that the government going after the data to the extent they were just showed, I think it was showing it was a bit petty about the issue. And it's been expensive. I mean, there's a lot of money being spent on this going back and forth in terms of, the court cases, et cetera, and destroying the data, by the way. But I think it's unfortunate, because if there was this understanding by the federal government that they wanted to get rid of the gun registry, then fine. What was the head scratcher for many Canadians was, why go as far as you're going in terms of just, getting rid of all the data? It's kind of like
but what I'm saying is they campaigned on it. They said they were going to do it. The court says it's in their jurisdiction. And then even if you say it's costly, and even the judge even ruled on that, saying if there's a price to be paid for enacting a statute that could engender pointless costs for another level of government because of the destruction of the data of the registry, that's to be paid at the polling booth, not before the courts. In other words, if you don't like it, vote differently. Canadians voted for a majority?
Well, yeah. You can go so far with that. I'm just saying that when people understood how this issue was going to be managed, okay? I'm trying to take, there's a lot of torque in this argument, as you know, over the years. And when you look at what reasonable people looked at this and said, okay, you've decided to get rid of the registry, fine. But going forward, should it not be if a municipality or province wants to have access to the data for their public safety purposes, policy-wise, why not let them do that? That was the basic argument. So they fought out in the courts. Jurisdiction, I understand. Right. I understand the argument. I'm just saying it seemed by many to be quite petty in terms of going after this. And what was the expense for the federal government if they allowed the provincial government to own the data? They would have to deal with that with their electors as well, provincially. So, that's where we're left. But the judgment, you're right, is unequivocal.
Let me just bring in, I know Candace Bergen wants to get in there. Francis Scarpaleggia, your party brought in the long gun registry. The courts have basically said the feds have jurisdiction here. There's going to be an appeal, I understand. But what's your view?
Well, there will be an appeal, and hopefully there will be an injunction to not destroy the data until the appeal is heard. I would have to say that the government's really gone after this issue with a vengeance. I mean, it didn't stop at at getting rid of the long gun registry, which I understand was a campaign promise. It went further into destroying the data and then destroying getting rid of the requirement for gun shops to keep the famous green books, which were records of sales. So, and then of course it didn't implement gun show regulation. So I think it's more than just about the gun registry. It's about an attitude which it really seems to want to weaken, more broadly speaking, gun control in Canada. I mean, I just don't understand why they go after this issue so aggressively, time after time.
I'd be very happy to tell you, and I think it's clear to Canadians why it's so important that we destroy the data. If we didn't, we know that if the Liberals ever got back in government, if the NDP ever were given the ability, they would recreate the long gun registry federally immediately. We made the promise, Evan, as you pointed out, to not only get rid of the long gun registry, but the data, we believe, is the registry. The information that was gathered on law-abiding Canadians is the long gun registry. We committed to destroying that, and that's what we did across the country.
Can I just get, obviously Quebec is a big issue. The Quebec government has immediately announced its intention to appeal to the Supreme Court, and I'll just show you some of Justice Minister Bernard Arnault's statement on this. He said, quote, "There's a consensus in Quebec concerning the registration of firearms. All political parties represented in the Assemblée Nationale defend this position and strongly oppose the federal government's decision to abolish the firearms registry." All of them do. So if the entire Quebec legislature and government and the opposition are in agreement that they want to keep this, is it a form? And the courts are saying you have the jurisdiction and you have the right to do it. But why do it if the will of the people of Quebec are against it?
2 points on that. The commitment that we made to end the long gun registry was to all Canadians, including Quebecers. And I can tell you that we hear from long gun owners in Quebec that want the data destroyed. But secondly, certainly the government in Quebec has the right, if they want to recreate the long gun registry, they absolutely can create their own registry. But what we're not going to do is provide the data on law-abiding Canadians for them to do so. We believe, again, our commitment was to all Canadians, including Quebecers, and we're following through on that.
I think it's interesting, Evan, that we had a government that, when they were elected, the Conservatives said, we don't want to have Ottawa dictating terms to everyone. I think what we see in this, and we just heard it from Candace, is we're going to do this whether you like it or not, in terms of, even the data. They have absolute right in terms of any. Just let me finish. I didn't interrupt you.
Real quick.
It's just we weren't, they were clear about ending the gun registry, but to go to the extent they have, it's interesting to see a party that said we're not going to interfere with provincial decision making, but now they've gone to the point of saying we're going to go so far that we're going to undermine the consensus within a province.
I got Candace Bergen, real quick response.
That's nonsense, Paul. When you make a commitment as a federal government to Canadians, we believe this country is one country and we're united. When we make a promise to the entire country,
it's got nothing to do with it. We're talking about the data.
We make a promise to Quebecers. No, it does. We fundamentally believe that Quebec long gun owners also should not have the data that was gathered by them on them by the federal government. It should be destroyed. It's a commitment we made. We don't want you to have it either, Paul.
Big brother.
You'll refer the gun registry.
You can see, despite what the courts say, the debate here in Ottawa goes on. Candace Bergen, Paul Dewar, Francis Carpelleggia.
Thank you.
For that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.